Good morning, everybody. It's Barry Browne from XenTegra. Welcome to episode 1 of This Week in VMware from your good friends over at XenTegra Canada, XenTegra India, and XenTegra US. On the line with me is a couple of other VMware enthusiasts, VMware experts, who I'll pass around the microphone here momentarily to introduce themselves. Before we start, Rizwan, who's on the line with us, sounds like he's in a highway somewhere over in India. So Rizwan, if you want to come off mute real quick, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and your experience with VMware products and VMware solutions.
Hi Barry, hi Philip. So this is Rizwan here. So I work predominantly on the workspace one and then user computing platforms, but most of the time we come across vSphere. That's one of the key product and key solution offering from VMware, and this is what we're going to talk about today on how VMware vSphere can be leveraged across and deploying a complete solution for the customers.
Good. Looks like a good place to start the conversation. After we have the big brain of the room, Mr. Philip Sellers, why don't you introduce yourselves? Tell us, who you are, where you come from, your background, and what you do day to day for the team with at XenTegra.
Well, good morning, Barry, Rizwan. I'm a solutions architect here at XenTegra. Come from a customer background. I've been working for VMware customers for probably the last 20 or so years. 15 of those very, very focused in on vSphere and the core hosting platforms, and then watching VMware evolve this portfolio to include so many more things like SD-WAN, networking, network virtualization, all of the vSAN technologies and their security suite. So I've been square in those technologies for better part of 2 decades, and really a huge advocate for the VMware platforms. Have had so much success with my past roles and with customers now who are VMware based. So love to help evangelize the products, talk about what's new and what's going on. One of the things I've done for most of those years has also been a blogger, active on Twitter and out in the community trying to help others learn. So that's a passion of mine. And so happy to be able to help launch this new podcast, which will be focused in on the other parts of the VMware portfolio. And just to put a plug in, for anybody that's EUC centric and wants to know more about VMware's EUC portfolio, we also have a podcast called On the Horizon from XenTegra, which is all about Horizon and Workspace ONE. So we're happy to launch this one as a complement to the EUC podcast.
So a couple of things to follow up with it. You gave a cheap plug for the other podcast. What about a cheap plug for your own blog? You can't say you have a blog and I'll tell people about it.
That's true, yeah. So the blog these days lives over at vbrainstorm.com. Myself and a couple other folks out in the VMware community, we've joined ourselves together. We all had blogs individually for a long time, but we've decided to join those up and sort of a better together story, sort of like XenTegra. So we love to be able to get out and talk about all sorts of technology there.
vbrainstorm.com. I like it. That's an excellent URL for a collaboration type of a blog. One final thing before we move away from the introductions. You do a lot of work with the VMUG community. You're a VMUG leader for your neck of the woods. And I'm a leader for one of the co-leaders, I should say, for VMUG Halifax is where I am. And what's your chapter called? Raleigh? North Carolina?
So we're in Charlotte, yeah. So I work with the Charlotte local chapter, past leader for the Myrtle Beach chapter. I'm also a co-leader. We've got a great resource down here in the Carolinas. His name is Pedro Acosta. Pedro, hey. He's a XenTegra customer as well. But Pedro does a lot to kind of help all of the different Carolina chapters, but we all come together once a year, kind of like you do up in Canada for a user con. We just held that last month, had a great turnout in Raleigh, and excited to be able to do those every year as kind of a free exhibition, free conference for all of our members in the Carolinas.
Yeah, everything we do is for the community at the end of the day. I just love. I have a blog. I'm not going to mention what it is because I haven't touched it in probably 2 years now. Just, life gets in the way, kids, work, blah, blah, blah. So we'll get on with that. But the actual topic of today we're going to talk about is something that was announced / released, I want to say late last year, and it's the whole concept of vSphere Plus. So I guess, an open question to start things off is, I hear vSphere Plus, I hear new version of vSphere. Correct? I think I'm wrong with that. So maybe Rizwan, why don't you start us off? Is vSphere Plus a different product, different ones and zeros that we install on our devices, or what is it? Rizwan, you're still on mute there, but well, we may have lost Rizwan, Phil. So over to you. What the heck is vSphere Plus?
Well, it's not a new version. It certainly sounds like it could be, but sort of like your Discovery Plus and Disney Plus, it's a subscription. So this was the year of pluses, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. And VMware was no different. So it's not VMware's first foray into subscription licensing. They have a on-prem term license that also exists, but vSphere Plus is a new iteration that is very cloud-centric. And so it comes with some additional tools and features as part of the package, and that's what differentiates it from what VMware has done in the past with subscriptions.
Okay, so I'm a customer today. I have my on-prem perpetual licenses. I'm happy as a clam. Why would I want to even look at vSphere Plus in terms of features, in terms of the cloud connectivity that's available? What's the real have to go to vSphere Plus? Like, what's the one line? With the tagline, I guess.
I'm going to be really honest. It's tough to fit it into one line. The elevator pitch for it is difficult, and it's really because there is a lot in the package. And I would start by saying, if you're happy as a clam with your on-prem perpetual licenses, you're not alone. It's a large percentage of the traditional VMware install base, I think, that kind of falls into this category, honestly. But what I would tell a customer is that you're going to get some very cloudified, enhanced features.
Cloudified? Did you just make that up? I love that. Cloudified.
Yeah, you're going to get some new consoles, some new enhancements. If you're familiar with just kind of what VMware is doing in terms of cloud services, they're really trying to push things forward. You're going to get some health check services and some lifecycle services and things like that aren't available in any other edition of vSphere. And I expect this to continue. So I expect VMware to continue to innovate and put features into vSphere Plus that aren't going to make their way into the perpetual license. For good or for bad. But that's kind of where the world is today. If you're looking at things like Kubernetes and trying to do cloud native development and container orchestration, you're going to get those features included. It's not the only way to get it. Obviously, there are other ways to get Tanzu and the Kubernetes stack onto your existing perpetual vSphere. But this is one way. So if you switch over to the subscription, the full vSphere Plus, those features come along with it as well. So if you're any at all familiar with Tanzu, they have a product called Mission Control. Mm-hmm. And Mission Control is a cloud-based console for orchestrating and monitoring your Kubernetes, your Tanzu installations. So those are just a few quick examples, but there's those features, and adopting more of the VMware portfolio, those make vSphere Plus a more viable option for existing perpetual customers. I would say, unlike other transitions to subscription, I'm not seeing a huge premium in cost. So your existing perpetual, you're paying service and support, or subscription and service. I think it's SNS in VMware vernacular. You're already paying, your support contract every year. moving to subscription is not going to cost you a significant difference. And there are programs today that help you trade up and move to subscription licensing from your perpetual. So you do get some extra value in moving today.
Okay. So we talked about I'm an existing customer, I moved to the vSphere Plus. What about if I'm a Hyper-V, a KVM customer, or a XenServer customer? Is it just a no-brainer to go to the vSphere Plus versus, invest in, the traditional vSphere, for lack of a better word?
Yes. In short, yes. I think it would make a ton of sense because it is all-inclusive. So vSphere Plus packages your vCenter. You no longer have to license that separately. You get entitlements to as many vCenter servers as you need. You license the cores for vSphere Plus, and it is the all-inclusive package. So it's equivalent to Enterprise Plus level licensing. You get distributed switching, you get host profiles, you get all of the great features that you know from Enterprise Plus as part of the package. A few months ago, VMware also came out with vSphere Plus Standard, not to just muddy the waters, but right? But Standard is what you would normally see with vSphere Standard. And so it's lacking the DRS features, distributed switching, and some of the other things that you get. But it includes the cloud services that we were just talking about as well.
But that's what I was going to bring up. So me, as somebody who doesn't necessarily fully understand the offering, which is kind of why we're having this podcast today, is vSphere Plus a cloud product, or do I still leverage my on-prem, my vCenter, my VMs, and it just the management or the orchestration moves to a cloud console? I guess maybe let's talk about that for a second, in terms of what cloud means within vSphere Plus.
Yeah, let's dig in on that. No, it does not mean cloud hosted. It's still your on-prem resources running vSphere. What goes away or what changes, I guess I should say, it doesn't go away. Your license management is different. That moves to the cloud, away from the normal licensing that you see in vCenter, your license keys and things like that. That moves up to a cloud console. And so that's one of the main features, or one of the features of the cloud console. But think of it as the cloud features are going to be kind of a manager of managers. So all of your vCenters, all of your inventory around the globe gets connected into a central console, sort of a launching point, that single pane of glass that we've been chasing for a decade or more. Right?
It's coming, Phil. It's coming.
I know it's coming. We're getting there. That's part of what we're getting out of it. But you get that globalized view of your inventory, your events. I feel like they're pulling some pieces from Skyline, which is VMware's free if you have support. Not security, but health check, health
monitoring and whatnot.
Monitoring, yeah. They're pulling pieces of that into this central console. And then, we certainly can talk about the changes to lifecycle, being able to upgrade your instances and things like that and manage them from the VMware Cloud solution. That's also a part of the solution. So it's more of the management services that are being lifted up into the cloud. It's not unlike what we're seeing with Citrix Cloud, where all of the management layer gets moved up into a cloud service. Sort of the same thing we're seeing with Horizon Cloud Console as well. So the benefit there for the customer is they no longer have to lifecycle some of those pieces. They're getting the cloud management features, and VMware is responsible for delivering and making sure that those pieces of the infrastructure are always up to date and lifecycled.
Well, you bring up a good point there, where the VMware is on the hook for kind of maintaining the backend infrastructure. But I assume that means the customer needs to be in cadence or in a supported environment for keeping that support. So does that mean, as VMware gets more aggressive about upgrading, quote unquote, the backend, the customer needs to be more aggressive about upgrading the on-prem environment, going from 6.5, 6.7, 7.0, 8.0 now. Does that mean the on-prem lifecycle has to be accelerated?
In this case, I don't think so. And I'll caveat it with this. I think from a vCenter perspective, you may see some of that. But today, vCenter 8, for example, it's fully compatible with much earlier versions of vSphere, ESX.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still attach workload clusters and things to newer versions of vCenter. And so I think it'll be more critical that you keep your vCenter up to date, but not necessarily your full infrastructure. I know it's tough. I mean, practicality, running the operations for 20 years, I know it's tough to keep up with things. I was a little shocked a few months ago to go, oh, wow, 6.7 is now end of service life. That's
crazy. How did that happen?
Right?
Yeah, that happened very, very fast, but it didn't. It felt fast.
It certainly felt fast. And so things like keeping your vCenter up to date, I think, will become more of an issue. As we're watching VMware, and I know this isn't a talk about Tanzu, but one of the things that you see is that your TKG services versions, they're very tied to the version of vCenter. And so I see VMware kind of doing the same thing here with these cloud services. It's going to be very vCenter version dependent, but they're also trying to give us tools to lifecycle that more easily, because again, those services are more tied to the vCenter version. But your TKG release schedule is it's tied to the version of vCenter that you have. So TKG and vCenter are very close.
I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit in my head here, so let me backtrack a second. With the management plane or the control plane sitting in VMware Cloud, what does that mean for data residency requirements? Things like GDPR, anything if it's just management?
Yeah, I mean, from a data perspective, I think most of those compliance regulations tend to do with data locality and things like that, rather than actual SaaS services. So to me, this looks and feels more like a, Salesforce, or, well, actually, even less so, because those have data inside of them that you're not really going to have here. It is much more of a management construct. Today, I believe, actually, I would have to go and look up where we can get vSphere Plus. I don't know if there are restrictions on regions or things like that. That may be a great follow-up that we can talk around compliance and impacts to vSphere Plus. It's great conversation. Yeah,
because that was going to be my next question is, where is vSphere Plus? Is it in GCP, on AWS, Azure, and what regions? But like you say, that's probably a conversation for another day. But I think it's a conversation worth happening. Me in Canada land, I prefer my stuff to be in Canada.
Sure.
I don't have a reason for it, considering my current role, but I just like to keep it close. Keep your data and your applications together as much as possible. Even though we're talking about control plane type of traffic, if I can keep it within my borders, great. And I know some of our friends in Europe are really, really sensitive to this
Sure.
kind of these topics. So yeah, that this absolutely could be a follow-up for potentially episode 2.
I was going to say, I think we found episode 2 organically here. Maybe we can get us a nice expert from VMware who can help us talk through this. But yeah, it is more of a SaaS-based management layer. And from what I've seen, all of these are being hosted by VMware. They're not really disclosing if they're using a hyperscaler behind these services. It's just more that they're delivering them. So not sure if it's out of VMware data centers or if they are partnered with a hyperscaler. So great line of questions that we'll get answers for.
Yeah. Just to kind of follow up on that, continue the cloud talk for a second. You and I have been kind of knees deep in VMC on AWS for the more like the last 9 months, before the last 2-3 months. Mm-hmm. How does a VMC on AWS play into vSphere Plus, or does it even matter? Is it just going to work?
No, two completely different use cases here.
Hmm.
vSphere Plus is a licensing mechanism for your on-prem clusters. Even though you've
Oh,
got this cloud connected thing, it's not really used when it comes to VMC.
oh, so it's straight licensing on-prem. That's vSphere Plus. Is that
Yeah,
or the one-liner we're looking for?
that's more, yes. And I would add to that, it's licensing for on-prem vSphere with cloud connected features.
Okay. Um, Earlier on, you kind of compared it to Citrix Cloud. In the Citrix world, you do have quote unquote appliances in your data center that connects out to the Citrix backend. In terms of architecture, what does that look like with vSphere Plus?
So in vSphere Plus, we've got something called the on-premises cloud gateway. Very, very similar to what we're talking about with Citrix Cloud or with Horizon Cloud Universal. Those appliances are installed on your premises, and then they facilitate all of the encrypted traffic out to the cloud services. So very, very similar. It's very lightweight. Most security folks will not be concerned with it. It sits on your on-prem network and it talks out to the internet. So no special firewall rules have to be opened as long as the appliance can get to an internet connection.
So straight 443 out to url.com.
That's it.
Easy peasy. So there's no worrying about direct connects or private MPLSs, nothing like that. It's just straight internet bound traffic.
That's right. And again, because it's a management layer, the traffic's a lot less invasive. It's just a two-step process. Once you deploy the appliance, you connect it to your cloud account. So you have to have the VMware cloud account that your services are associated with. You connect it up there, and then you connect it to your on-prem vCenter servers. So very lightweight appliance, and then it facilitates all of that traffic and communication.
Yeah, it kind of makes life easy. And kind of back to the conversation we had at the top, if you're a net new VMware customer, installing this as your first gateway drug of VMware, I guess, is a no-brainer. For your existing customers, it's a little more work. You got to set up, like you said, VMC. It needs to be in place. You need to have your service accounts. But it doesn't sound like it's a real heavy lift to move from your existing licensing model to vSphere Plus.
It's not. It's a pretty simple transition. And again, they do have some programs that you can work out with your account reps, or, we can certainly facilitate that conversation from a XenTegra perspective. But it is a simple sort of transition. There are programs because, we've been through this 2 or 3 times in my career, Microsoft transitioning from sockets to cores on things like Windows and SQL Server. VMware's adopted a very similar approach to transition. So if you are running more than 16 cores per socket, then they're going to grant you those cores at the same price during transition, and then you can lock in that pricing for a set period. And then if you're not running that additional density, 16 is the default conversion for VMware. So you do get benefits from your existing licenses as you do a conversion. And I get that this is probably a difficult conversation for a lot of customers. The reality is it is one we're going to be faced with as customers. And this is kind of the writing on the wall as we work with our vendor partners. There's just a large focus on moving to subscription-based licensing rather than perpetual with support. So,
so if I read between the lines on those comments, are you, breaking out the crystal ball saying perpetual licensing will be a thing of the past in the future?
So I don't even need the crystal ball. This is one of the stated objectives as VMware moves forward. That's a transition that was already started prior to the Broadcom. I know that the big B word is something that gets thrown around a lot. And, there is a stated objective there to move more of the business to subscription. But this transition process actually started before the acquisition was announced. And so I do see that as writing on the wall. We are moving towards subscription. Now, are they going to do what Citrix did and completely eliminate perpetual licensing? That I can't tell you. That I would need a crystal ball, and I would say it's really foggy right now. So I'm not getting clarity. So it's going to be a to be determined there. But I know from conversations with customers, there's a lot of people who are very, very comfortable with the existing perpetual model. And, as we talk with customers, if that's getting the job done, then by God, that's what we continue to do, and we'll help you renew that. For us, there's not an incentive or a reason why we're going to try to forcefully move you. We're going to help you find the right place as a customer and help you get what you need to get your business objectives completed and successful. So that's the value that I hope we can bring to customers, is helping to advise where it makes sense to move to a subscription basis and where it makes sense to renew their perpetual. So that's a great conversation. And I think it's one that every customer should be having, just to be educated about what subscription benefits they could be entitled to, and if those are of value for them.
Yeah. And further to that, another conversation that, I'm hearing from customers is the whole Broadcom thing. What's happening with VMware? Is it VMware, is it always the VMware we know and love from years bygone, or, what is it going to morph into going forward? So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainties out there. But partners like us can certainly help. You walk you through next steps in that VMware journey for sure.
Yeah.
I just want to pause real quick, Phil, and see if Rizwan's available to kind of chime in. I've been kind of hammering you pretty hard, like almost like under the lights, kind of. I'm the bad cop, and you're the criminal. Answer my questions. So Rizwan, you want to chime in here real quick before we start kind of winding things down in episode 1?
Hey, the only Philip, the only thing what I wanted to ask on this conversation was perhaps this can also be a good way of licensing our customers who are predominantly looking at deploying their workloads across on-prem as well as on the cloud. Kind of a hybrid work style that they're looking at. And it can be also looked at deploying the workloads across on the DR side, making cloud.
And he was making such a good point too. Oh, Rizwan, my man. Well, we lost him. So let's turn it back to you, Phil. What are your thoughts on the whole thing at a super high level? From this brief conversation, I don't see any huge concerns here. When I first heard about vSphere Plus, reading the blogs, reading the forums, there was some uproar, for lack of a better word, about where VMware is going in terms of the whole licensing model. But from this conversation, if I'm sitting on the customer side of the fence, I am not too worried.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, where would I be most worried? It's where it hits my budget, right? As a customer, representing that customer point of view, that is ultimately the major concern. And I think most customers are worried that subscription ultimately raises their total cost of ownership. And the fortunate thing I can say is I'm not seeing that today. So for the quotes and for the opportunities that I have done, particularly in a greenfield environment, to your point and your question earlier, Barry, subscription actually has been more cost effective. And so I'm not seeing an intense increase in cost. And so I think that's the primary concern I had coming into the conversation. And just from the insight that I've had going through a few different opportunities, quoting this for customers, I'm not seeing that. Perpetual buy-in always has a horizon, a number of years before it ultimately pays off. And when I'm comparing that against subscription for vSphere Plus, I'm actually getting more value at a lower cost during that multi-year period. Now, certainly, as you look at it across 10, 20-year horizons, those dynamics could change. But within the first 5 years, I'm seeing subscription equal to or less than the cost of perpetual. So just to kind of help ease those conversations, I can't say that holds true in every environment and for every customer. But the examples and the scenarios that I've run so far, that's been my impression, is that it's flat or slightly less on the first few years of ownership.
So Phil, one scenario that I just kind of thought of in my head is I'm an existing vSphere customer today. I haven't vCenter deployed across my data centers, and I'm on perpetual licensing. If I want to bring in a new VMware technology, say vSAN, is it before I invest significant capital in the vSAN licensing, and does it make sense to then, before I spend that money, look at vSphere Plus, where I may get into the product cheaper? Is that how that would work?
So yes and no. So I'm going to pull vSAN back because as a follow-up, we should probably talk about vSAN Plus subscriptions. So one thing here, vSphere Plus does not include vSAN. This is, again, very close and very related to Enterprise Plus some cloud services. Now, it does include Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. And so that is a separate subscription. And so for customers who are looking to get into Tanzu, who maybe are looking to start up a new cluster, yes, I think it's a very cost-effective way to look at licensing and getting into Tanzu on a discrete cluster or growing your cluster. I think that this makes a lot of sense when you're adding that service and you're looking to consume Tanzu, which is also, by the way, a subscription service. So vSphere, vSAN, vCenter, they're somewhat the odd man out in the VMware portfolio. Almost everything else is offered as a subscription. Your SD-WAN, your Carbon Black security services, your Horizon and Workspace ONE, almost everything else in the portfolio is already subscription-based. And so vSphere has been the holdout. And so again, just kind of adding more to that perspective of why I think the transition's inevitable.
Yeah, so back to the crystal ball. I think you, while our audience was listening, you got out some Windex and cleared up that fog a little bit.
Yeah, our EUC customers made this transition 2 years ago or more, or started the transition 2-3 years ago. So yeah, it seems like it's an inevitable thing. But yes, back to your question, I think if you're looking to do things like Tanzu, if you find value in a large distributed environment where the cloud features, bringing all of that data together provides value to your organization, I think these are kind of no-brainer moves. If you're that smaller customer, small to medium-sized businesses, I think that the value becomes harder to articulate, honestly. But certainly for our enterprise customers, I think there's a lot of value to be had here in vSphere Plus.
So what you just said there was it can be quite confusing. So call XenTegra. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I like that. I think that sums it up well.
And that's probably a good point to wrap up episode 1. Licensing is never a fun topic, so why we chose to talk about licensing as episode 1, I don't know, but it ended up being quite fun. So how about that? So with that, sorry, go ahead.
It's constantly changing. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we're having to keep up with it, and I know as a customer, it was really tough for me to keep up with all the ins and outs of this kind of stuff. So that's where my partners helped. Bring the Windex, as Barry said. I think that become a catchphrase.
Trademark. Let's go. Put it on a T-shirt. Okay, well let's call that episode 1. And Phil, keep me honest here. We're planning to do these podcasts weekly into we're going to record Monday mornings. By the time we add our polish to them, they'll probably get posted throughout the week. I'm not sure what the regular cadence we're going to be doing, but certainly as a minimum, we plan to record weekly, and we'll see how we do. I'm looking forward to a long journey of podcasting with you three.
Me too. Barry, thank you so much. Rizwan, appreciate you trying to join. I know I know we lost you there for a minute, but look forward to all you have to join in future episodes too.
Hey, Philip, was that for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure, Philip. Sure. So we've been traveling the whole time, so that's right.
Yep, no worries. And Barry, thanks again.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I love talking technology at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning.
Best time. We're fresh, right?
That's right. All right, gentlemen, we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Philip.